When you first start boxing, your wrists, your forearms, and your elbows are going to hurt. It's the repetitive strain and the repetitive force of punch after punch that builds up. And if you don't have strong forearms or wrists, you're gonna feel it, and it's not gonna feel that great. The good news is that you can actually train these muscles to absorb force, produce better force, and honestly be a little bit faster. And by doing so, you're gonna turn them into like a potential shield against injury, against sprains, against twists, against any weird feeling that could come from punching something over and over again. Boxing is an amazing tool to increase your conditioning, aka your cardio, burn a bunch of calories, and get pretty shredded. But like any skill, it's not easy to develop. There's going to be some things that might feel uncomfortable along the way that you're going to have to push through or be smart enough to train through. So I recently had the opportunity to spend about 5 days with the great Tony Jeffries. Not only did I get to host both level 1 and level 2 of the Box and Burn certification, which I highly recommend if you're a fitness professional, I got to spend a lot of one-on-one time with Tony. So I feel like I got years of boxing education in just 5 short days. One thing that repeatedly came up in my conversations with Tony and my training with Tony is how good boxing is for the mind. In terms of the discipline it takes to just show up, but also in terms of the meditative aspect. When you're boxing, you have to be so focused on what your coach is calling out, so focused on the combo, so focused on physically relaying that brutal choreography so that you don't mess up. And that intense focus on what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you're feeling leads to all that other bullshit in your head just floating away for the couple minutes. And that really is the essence of meditation, just clearing all the bullshit out here so you can be in the moment. So boxing is an amazing tool for that. And because of that, we've implemented it with a lot of our clients here. But one thing that started to happen is that people are starting to say that their wrists and forearms are not necessarily hurting, just feeling a little bit achy because they're punching things for the first time in their life. So I wanted to show you 6 exercises that you can use to strengthen and condition your forearms, wrists, and elbows so that when you start boxing, nothing hurts and you can just fly right into it. So before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of the forearm. Your forearm has 2 bones. They rotate around each other. Your forearm really is a miracle of evolution. How weird is that it's 2 bones that rotate around each other? There's nothing else in your body that functions remotely like that. But because of that cool, complicated nature, there's a bunch of muscles that work different ways, both in terms of flexing, in terms of extending, and then in terms of rotating. And if we want strong forearms that feel good, we can't neglect any of those functions. The first exercise is the old school forearm roller or the wrist roller, whatever you call it. You've definitely seen this one before. Maybe you've seen it at a gym. Maybe you've seen a machine. Maybe you've seen an old guy with a half of a broom handle and a rope going like this in a park as he stares at you in a very intimidating way. So when you throw punches, whether they're landing on a mitts, whether they're landing on a heavy bag, your forearm is going through intense flexion and extension. And if you don't have the strong muscles to maintain keeping a neutral wrist while you're landing those punches, you're gonna end up in a bad position like this or like this when you make contact. And that is where you run the risk of a sprained wrist, a broken bone in your hand, or just general, this is not fun. So the forearm roller is going to be a very accessible exercise. All you're going to do is find the right implement. You can make one. There are definitely tutorials on YouTube. We have a machine here. So all you're going to do to set up for this is 1, make sure you have an appropriate weight. It's always best to start with a conservative weight option, aka a lightweight, to make sure that you have the form down so you're not grinding through it and doing ego lifting on stupid little exercises like this. So you're going to keep your arms straight. You're going to grab the roller with your palms facing down. And all you're going to do, roll the handle towards you on the way up. So you're going to be pulling your hands back like this. And once the weight reaches the top of whatever implement you're doing, you're going to pause for a second and you're going to lower the weight down even slower than you raised it up. You're going to do that by reversing. You're going to push the handle away from you, so you're rotating it counterclockwise. This is an exercise that's not very taxing on the central nervous system, so you can do it quite often. I would recommend doing 3 or 4 sets of just 2 rolls up and down with a moderate weight, a weight that feels like your forearms are going to explode by the end of it. So this exercise is not only going to shield your forearms against pain when boxing, it's just going to build you overall grip strength and bigger forearms, which I'm told are attractive to the opposite sex. Now, boxing is a very violent, very ballistic sport. So I would not be doing you any favors if I did not show you exercises that were also ballistic, also somewhat violent, and somewhat mimic the functionality of boxing. So the second exercise for strong forearms is a plate pop. Yes, it's a hilarious name. I don't know who came up with it, but I also love it. So for a plate pop, you're going to grab an Olympic weight plate. So one of those big circular ones. I would not recommend doing this with a steel one unless you are very confident in yourself. So you're going to pinch the plate like so. You're going to have your fingers straight and your thumbs on the other side. You're going to start with the weight at the ground and you're going to kind of squat down just so you can start with the weight lower. Anytime we're doing anything that involves dropping and raising, it's very important that you keep your back flat. I do not want you to do this with a rounded back where you get awesome forearms, but then you blow out a lumbar spine. That means you can't box. That means you can't do shit. So please don't do that. All you're going to do is explosively lift up. So use your whole body to raise up. And as you are lifting up, you're going to explosively pull that elbow up. When you're about half of the way up, you're going to let go of the plate so it sails a little bit up on its own. As soon as it starts its descent towards the ground, you're going to drop that hand quickly, violently, and accurately, and you're going to pinch that plate again. You're then going to continue that motion like 10 to 15 reps on each side. So functional fitness is a loaded term that really doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just a marketing term. But an exercise like a plate pop actually is functional, because when you are using your grip strength, when you are using your forearms in real life, it's never going to be under perfect conditions like in the gym where you're, going like this as the world just slows down around you. You're going to be carrying stuff. There's going to be kids running at you. There's going to be uneven surfaces. You're going to drop stuff and have to catch it. So something like a plate pop is going to condition your forearms for the real world, and it's especially going to condition your forearms for when you start boxing. Strong forearms also means you're going to be able to crush stuff with one hand, whatever that may be in your daily life. So to mimic that action of pinching and holding something as hard as you possibly can, this next movement is called a pinch row. Now for this, you are going to need a squat rack or something that is not going to slide, so something made of a material that's not going to be slippery as you get sweaty, because hopefully as you're training, you're getting sweaty. So to do this, you're going to start with the palm facing the rack. You're going to pinch opposite sides of the rack with your thumb and your forearms. From there, you're going to take a quarter of a step back just so you can have a slight lean for when you start. From there, you're going to let yourself fall back ever so gently just to a place where you can actually control yourself with just that pinch. Keep your glutes tight, keep your core tight, keep your body in a nice straight line. And once you have that arm completely straight, completely locked out, almost like the end of a TRX row position, you're going to pinch the shit out of that rack and pull yourself up. So this movement takes the emphasis from your back, from your scapula, from your traps, from your rhomboids, and puts it on the forearm via that pinching motion and that angle of your body. So this is a great way to train the strength and endurance of your forearm, because as you get really into boxing, it's going to be pretty annoying if you have to stop because your forearms are gassed when you really want to keep going because you're enjoying it that much. On the subject of holding, this next movement is a single arm prone barbell hold. You can call it a row hold, you can call it whatever you want.
Call me Susan if it makes you happy.
It's not really going to affect how you do it. So to set this up, you're going to put a barbell in a rack. You want it to be so that when you grab the barbell from underneath, there's about 6 inches to 8 inches between the floor and your back. You do not want to be touching the ground. You want to be able to be hanging with your back off the ground. So you're going to start by grabbing the barbell with 2 hands. Once you're in position, drive your feet into the ground, lift your hips off the ground, back hovering over the ground. You're going to take one hand, move it to the center of the barbell, and remove that other hand. You are going to fight as hard as you can to keep your chest and shoulders square to the ceiling above you, and all you're going to do is with a straight arm that is on the barbell, you're going to hold for as long as you can. For some of you, that might be 5 seconds. For some of you, that might be 5 minutes. If you can hold this for a really long time, what you need to do is find something weighted to put on you, whether that be a weight vest, or like in this video, have your amazing trainer put a plate on your chest as you hold. This is another movement that's going to train the endurance, strength, and conditioning of your forearm, but it's also going to provide the benefit of getting traction along that entire arm. So your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder are going to get a little bit of that traction. Like, when you crack your knuckles, that's just creating space between the joints enough for the synovial fluids to make a popping sound. You're going to be doing the same thing here. There's going to be a little bit of space created in your elbow, in your wrist, and in your shoulder. So it's going to have a double benefit of actually making the joint potentially feel better while building that forearm strength, endurance, and ability to punch for a very long time. The elbow is a very annoying joint because there are a lot of things that meet at a very small nexus on your elbow. It's a very small pathway for tendons, muscles, nerves, and other things to flow through and connect. So if one thing goes wrong, it has a tendency to make your elbow feel like it's ready to pop off. You know this with golfer's elbow, tennis elbow. I'm sure there's all sorts of different elbows now. Wii elbow, TikTok elbow, vape elbow, etc., etc. So there are many things that could affect how your elbow feels. And boxing is one of those things because of the constant impact floating up the chain that could end up at your elbow. So this next one, we'll call it an elbow forearm rotation. Honestly, I don't really know what it's called. We do it here all the time. I never bothered to look up the name, so that's what we're going to go with. So to set this up, you're going to need something to anchor a band. Ideally a squat rack, but if you have something else in your house that you can jerry rig, go for it. I'm not going to be much help there. You're going to take a very light band and you're going to anchor it at shoulder height across the rack. You're then going to take a step back, and so with a very straight arm, you're going to grab that band, whether one strand or two, you're going to find out. And all you're going to do is, keeping that arm straight, you're going to rotate those knuckles up to the ceiling, pause for a second, and then rotate back. So when we do this, what we're trying to do is rotate that entire arm as far as we can. And all of this is going to do is going to condition those little teeny tiny muscles that annoyingly meet in your elbow that make it feel like someone took a hammer and nail and just nailed right into that elbow joint. And it's going to condition those, create a little space, make them stronger, and also find any imbalances. This is an exercise that can be used for prehab, rehab, or strength and conditioning. I would recommend starting with a light band. Always start conservatively to make sure that you can do the movement for at least 10 reps comfortably. And once you can do that, gently move the weight up. This is not an exercise you're ever going to grind through like you're benching really heavy. This is something that should be smooth with a low grade of resistance that forces you to focus on getting that entire rotation every single rep. This last movement is going to train all the functions of the forearm and the wrist: the rotation, the flexion, and extension. So for this, you are going to need a broom handle or something like an Onnit mace or something like an Indian club. You're going to grab whatever you have. You're going to drive that elbow at 90 degrees. You're going to keep that elbow 90 degrees planted right against your rib cage. Imagine a teacher gave you a book in grade school, said don't let it drop. You're going to plant it right there, and that elbow's not going to move. If you go out here like this, you're messing up the exercise. It needs to be nice and tight like this, and the forearm needs to be at 90 degrees right about there. So whatever you grab, you are gonna have it facing up. You're gonna have a neutral palm up like this. The first movement is you're gonna turn the knuckles to face the ground. You're gonna pause for a second, and then you're gonna rotate all the way to the other side, not surpassing that natural range of motion. You're gonna go 10 times each way, so 20 reps total, just like this. Then you're gonna pause with your palms in a neutral position, just like this. From there, you're gonna look like you're royalty and you're knighting somebody. So you're gonna take whatever you have, you're gonna drop that wrist towards the ground, and then pull it back. Drop the wrist towards the ground, pull it back. So you're turning your knuckles to face the ground, that implement is sticking straight out, and then you're pulling it back to that neutral spot. You're gonna go 10 reps there as well. This is something that can be used to be a lot of forearm, wrist, and elbow pain if you do it properly, if you do it correctly. So a broom handle is a great option for this because the broom handle is long, so the weight is going to be offset. Something like an Indian club is like a more roided up example of that because it's shorter but with more weight, but again, it's offset. You want the weight kind of more at the top than at the bottom so that you have something to fight against. By training all those functions with one movement, you're gonna make your forearm much more robust for creating force, but most importantly, absorbing force so that when you start hitting stuff, you don't have that like, why does everything hurt so bad moment. Just like anything with fitness, there's going to be a trade-off. There's going to be a little bit of a sacrifice. And when you start boxing, you're going to have some aches and pains in your wrists, forearms, and elbows. It's just inevitable. It's the very nature of the fact that you have not been punching stuff on a daily basis for your life, no matter how bad you want to. And now you are. So you need to train your forearms intelligently so that you can turn them into these robust mechanisms that work for you and not against you when you start boxing. Boxing is an amazing workout. It's an amazing mental experience. It's amazing confidence builder. And it's one of those things that, as Tony put it, you get better at every time you're here. So it's an amazing way to feel better in your own skin, to feel better about your capacity, and to burn off a lot of that annoyance that you have every day, whether you're staying at home with your kids, whether you're at work, or whether you're dealing with me all day, every day. So if you're trying to box, but you're afraid that things are going to hurt, that things are going to be painful, give these 6 exercises a shot and let me know in the comments how they work out for you.